ASEAN 2017's Media Affairs and Strategic Communications team. We are very pleased to have you join us today for our press briefing with Mr. Jose Concepcion III, also known as Mr. Joey Concepcion. Mr. Concepcion will talk about the ASEAN Business Advisory Council's Prosperity for All Summit being held at the City of Dreams, Manila. Mr. Concepcion is the chair for the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, ASEAN BAC. He is appointed as the presidential consultant for entrepreneurship by Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to help in MSME development. Mr. Concepcion also is the founder of Go Negosyo and the president and CEO of his family company, RFM Corporation. And with that, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Joey Concepcion. Mr. Concepcion, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Sorry I'm late. We're conducting our ASEAN Business Advisory Council meeting today, briefing all the members of the activities that will happen tomorrow. April 28th, which is a Friday, will be the Prosperity for All Summit. This is the theme of the private sector, the business sector, parting for change, creating prosperity for all. Some of you may wonder why we changed the next line. It is more in line with the private sector and business. It is basically a continuation of the programs of this country, the Philippines, to really bring about prosperity for all nations. ASEAN stands as 10 countries, and it is my belief that 10 countries can coexist and continue beyond 50 years if everybody is a winner and not just a few countries are winners. It is important that ASEAN remembers that the inclusivity, especially for those who are at the bottom, countries who are trying to aspire to be as successful as Singapore, Malaysia, are helped by the more successful countries. Prosperity for all also falls down and goes through the citizens of each nation. Especially in the Philippines, we all see that poverty is our biggest problem. Poverty is the cause for major problems like drug addiction and a lot of crimes. The Prosperity for All Summit starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. We've invited 2 leaders, actually 3 leaders, who have confirmed. The Prime Minister of Malaysia has confirmed his attendance. We have also invited the Prime Minister of Thailand, who has also confirmed his attendance. We are still waiting for confirmation from the Prime Minister of Vietnam for his attendance. Hopefully he does attend. So we hope to expect 3 leaders to attend tomorrow's event. On top of that, we have former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who will be in attendance in the morning and joining one of the forums. Vice President Leni Robredo has agreed to attend and give a short talk on her poverty programs. She shares the same vision as what we do in really trying to create greater prosperity for all. The number of people that are expected to attend are about close to 1,000. We had a request of over 2,000 to attend the event, but we could not accommodate all of them. The priority was the quality of the audience, especially that we want to select those that will be part of what we call the enabling community. Really those that are in government, sector who are helping our micro and small entrepreneurs, and both from DTI and the Department of Agriculture, many of the big firms out there who are also practicing inclusive business. What is the objective of the Prosperity for All Summit? It's not only to create awareness that what is important is creating an inclusive environment, getting big business to really help our small businessmen, especially our micro and small entrepreneurs. Our MSMEs who basically, like in the Philippines, comprise 99.6% of the entire business community. 0.4% belong to the large companies. We are really encouraging all of these 0.4% of the largest corporations in the country to really help the 99.6% of micro and small. This is almost the same scenario that you see in many of the other countries in ASEAN who are more or less at the same footing in terms of economic prosperity. And one program that we feel that really can create and help many of our many micro and small entrepreneurs is the mentoring program that we have started to embark. And one of the deliverables for the ASEAN in 2017 is to create AMEN, which is the ASEAN Mentoring Entrepreneurship Network. This will be composed of volunteer mentors from each country that can be pooled together and be shared by each member country as to specific areas of expertise: agriculture, technology, logistics, and so forth. So it starts at 9 o'clock, and the opening remarks will be basically by the Malaysian PM Najib Razak, and the closing will be done by the Thai Prime Minister. Jopin, would you like to add to this?
Right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Besides the keynote messages from our prime ministers and our state leaders, we're also expecting a very rich discussion among 30 panelists, speakers and panelists. The panelists are powerhouse because incumbent and former leaders of the country and ASEAN nations will be there. From the Philippines, besides former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, we will have 2 senators, and we will have 2 incumbent secretaries or ministers who are with the government of President Duterte. What we did when we broke down the sessions into the 5 different themes was to find out what the challenges are that micro, small, and medium enterprises face right now. Our program is in line with the strategic action plan of the AEC, ASEAN Economic Community Integration. So what are the pains that MSMEs face? First is the enabling environment, which is why we have put together a powerhouse of policymakers from the executive, legislative, and business, so that they can discuss the policies that affect our MSMEs' business activities. Next, we discuss the markets. Access to markets is a big deal for MSMEs. While big brothers are there, we have to hear about the actual pains of the micro and small medium enterprises. Besides the market, we also talk about capitalization. But for tomorrow's purposes, we will be talking about non-traditional funding for capital and operational requirements. And then for our 4th session, we're going to talk about transformation. Transformation through disruptive technology and innovative processes. And finally, as Mr. Joey Concepcion mentioned, is the call to action, AMEN, or ASEAN Mentorship for Entrepreneurs Network. Tomorrow will be the start of building this AMEN network, which will hopefully be launched, not hopefully, but which will definitely be launched as a platform come November 2017. So that's it, in summary, what the program is all about.
Moving forward, this is the first ASEAN Business Advisory Council event on prosperity for all. This will be followed in September by the ASEAN Business Awards, which will happen during the Economic Ministers meeting September 6. And as part of the awards, there will be an Inclusive Business Award given to entrepreneurs or business establishments helping small entrepreneurs. So that will happen in September 6. And on October, I would think October 4, we'll have the first ASEAN Agri Summit. As we know, that many of the countries in the 10 ASEAN countries have been quite strong in agriculture, practically learning from the Philippines. And the funny part is now, as the teacher, once upon a time, we're now the student wanting to learn from these countries so far exceeded us in terms of agri-development in their country. And we've seen the relationship as agriculture has really prospered in their country, the poverty level has gone down. And in November, we will have the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit in Manila. This will be the main event for the year of ASEAN, wherein you have the 10 plus 11 or 12 leaders coming to the Philippines. Whether in Clark or here in Metro Manila, we hope Metro Manila, this will be the culmination of the activities of our government for this year's 50th year. And we really want to share with especially the Filipino people that ASEAN is not exclusive. ASEAN is inclusive. It is to benefit not only the large corporations out there, not only to benefit the more successful countries among the 10, but it is to benefit all nations among the 10 and every Filipino and every nationality in the 10 countries. And it is all about large business embracing small business to be part of the ecosystem. And this is the reason why we chose prosperity for all. In the end, as we see around the world, the moment prosperity for all is not achieved, we see nations pulling away from their group, as we see in Europe, in other parts of the world. We don't want that to happen to ASEAN. And it's very clear from the council members today, as we had our meeting, is that they want each and every country to rise together and nobody is left behind. Hopefully the message of each of the prime ministers that will be attending the event is basically to share their roadmap on how Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam did it. What was their formula for creating greater prosperity for their nation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Concepcion. We are now ready to take some questions. If you can, please come to the mics in the front to ask your questions and state your name and also your affiliation.
Karen Capina from PCO Strategic Communications. We're responsible for the materials that are used in the websites and social media. My question is, can you cite major opportunities in ASEAN for MSMEs that are available today? And what are we doing to enhance discussion channels in ASEAN to develop best practices and exchange information, as well as strengthen cooperation? Meaning, how can they know what to access, where to access it? Thank you.
The challenge really, especially for micro and small enterprise, is their ability to benefit from ASEAN. What really has to happen is the medium and large companies who are in partnership or is in exporting already to the 10 ASEAN countries embrace really the micro and small enterprises as part of the ecosystem. If you go around, it's very challenging, whatever it is, for a small entrepreneur to have direct relationship with maybe medium and large, especially in agriculture. So the way, what we've been explaining to the ASEAN Advisory Council is large corporations, and this is where inclusivity has to be practiced, is to really bring in, especially our small agri farmers, as part of the ecosystem, the supply chain. So as the big companies start to do business with the ASEAN neighbors, especially as tariffs are brought down, then the chances of micro and small entrepreneurs moving up from survival to sustainable, from small to medium, the effect is much faster. Indirectly, they would have mentorship, because as I bring in my own suppliers, whether it's in agri or whatever business it is, I indirectly already mentor them and strengthen the level of technical expertise to be able to supply me certain raw materials. And I think that is the formula that is the way forward for many of our micro and small. There will be a chance as technology improves, as platforms on online trading are there, whereby you would have maybe the small and medium enterprises being able to sell their goods on different retail platforms. But as we know, especially in the Philippines and maybe some other ASEAN countries, the challenge really is the level of availability of communication, especially on data access, especially on data access in the provinces. The challenge really is, by far, is to look at where each country's strength lies in. A typical example is, for example, in our own country, the Philippines, how do you poverty alleviation in the Philippines, by and large, whereby now your rice farmers are basically going to have to open up to the free trade. In other words, the tariff barriers on rice and access has been lifted as part of the ASEAN commitment. That exposes many of these farmers, whether in the Philippines or in other countries, on greater competition. The question there is that, are these small entrepreneurs ready? And again, that is a battle between the economists and those people who are creating prosperity. What is that balance? And this is one of the reasons why we selected prosperity for all. Because we have to look at, in the end, what I call the greater good. The greater good is, of course, one can argue that because of ASEAN, products and prices of products have to be competitive so that the consumers benefit. But then the entrepreneurs who are not fit to be in that sector, but comprise bulk of the population that are in the marginalized poor, what happens to them? How do you achieve that balance? And that is where, as an example in the Philippines, we are struggling with that policy. And you can see the president does struggle with it when he sees the poor. So through this program, hopefully each of the prime ministers will share their roadmap towards prosperity. And it's very clear that what Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam has done we've seen that the level of poverty has been reduced, and many countries can definitely take inspiration from that.
Gentleman in the black jacket, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm a reporter from China Xinhua News Agency. It was just now mentioned that tomorrow's meeting will be about businesses and market. And I want to have some information from you from the business perspective in the ASEAN region, and from your viewpoint, what's the prospect for the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership? And will that be a viable path to achieving the free trade area for the Asia Pacific in the long run? Thank you.
Hello. Hi. That is one of the things that is being discussed during this meeting, and also that the AEM, or the ASEAN Economic Ministers, are preparing for. As of now, there are still a lot of things that need to be ironed out, but everybody is committed to following the regional plan for the AEP and the RECP. Now, in terms of the businesses, strengthening the businesses partnership with government, one thing that the ASEAN-BAC at least would like to emphasize for this year under this chairmanship is a true partnership, which is why this ASEAN-BAC is insisting on a stronger participation and presence in the IB summit that is upcoming in September, on September 6th. So this is quite unprecedented that in an official meeting of inclusive business, in which government plan to put a declaration, a formal declaration of inclusive business, the private sector, through the ABAC, through the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, will be a strong partner. So what will be remarkable under this chairmanship of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council is that through the formal agenda of the ASEAN Economic Ministers and the ASEAN Economic Community Integration, we will try and provide inputs as much as we can, showing the strong support that business will always have, particularly for entrepreneurship. Thank you.
The gentleman in blue, please come up.
Good afternoon. I'm Melo Acuña from China Radio International. I'd like to ask Mr. Concepcion, how would micro, small, and medium enterprises survive when the government's mantra is liberalization, deregulation, and privatization? And what do you have to say about the access of small business to credit? Thank you.
As I said, it's a balance. And just as I mentioned earlier, take rice as an example. No? Definitely the quantitative restrictions have been removed as part of the agreement, and the economic ministers are holding to towards that commitment. The transformation of rice farmers to move into other crops is a challenge. Agriculture, most of our micro and small enterprises belong to the agri-sector. And if you look at it, that is where rural poverty really is. So there must be a roadmap. And by and large, the roadmap maybe in the Philippines, towards this area of rice, is to move into hybrid rice. So the compromise is a timeline. So before the entire implementing guidelines towards rice importation and total liberalization is done, according to the Secretary, it will take about a year or 2 years. So the farmers have basically 2 years to shape up. And the only way I've seen is a pathway towards using hybrid rice and the government support towards modernization of their equipments, which they are doing right now. Access to capital is being done as we speak by Secretary Mon Lopez with the President's support towards really eradicating 5-6. But really more than 5-6, it's really providing more money towards the poor entrepreneurs who do not have collateral. To be able to scale up from a micro to small to medium, you need capital. But the stumbling block to my mind is not interest rate. The stumbling block really is the collateral that they have. So this program that I'm told is going to be very easy on the collateral part. As I always share that, you know, this government gives about 80 billion as conditional cash transfer to our the poorest of the poor Filipino people. That 80 billion is just a one-time expense every year. You don't know if it does really help poverty. It maybe makes poverty where it is, and maybe worse because they just wait for that check. And my advice to the government and the president is, over time, this conditional cash transfer should be given to those who are working hard for a livelihood project. And they have many programs today. And this is why we have the Prosperity for All Summit, is because we want to know what were the programs used by Malaysia, Thailand, in really helping the poor people there transform their lives and achieve greater prosperity. Yeah. And this is the reason why we've invited the leaders, the different secretaries in trade, and entrepreneurs who are part of this to really share their story. And so we can take inspiration from what is that roadmap towards prosperity. Unless we have that program well in place, it's going to be a struggle. Yes, there is no issue that people will invest in a country that for as long as they can make money. They will invest in the Philippines for as long as they see that, you know, it's a gold mine and you can make money. So large companies with the resources all over the world, even in the 10 ASEAN countries, can easily do that. They will stop if they cannot make money, plain and simple. But how do you help the marginalized entrepreneurs? That's the challenge. And the only way I can see it is really for large corporations to really embrace the micro and small. We can say, okay, education is a challenge. And it's maybe a challenge even within the ASEAN countries who are at the bottom of the 10. But then education takes time. And education takes a lot of money. So in the immediate 5 years, let's say, of this president, what can be done? And to me, the programs must be very clear on how we will help these people. The big boys can take care of themselves. They will be there because they see money and they can make money. They will not be there if they cannot make money. But yet we have the 99.6% in the Philippines. It may be it is maybe the same thing for the other countries who are also the same predicament that we are in. Because I believe that a nation cannot continue whereby you have this inequality. I belong to the 0.4% of that sector, a big corporation. So I see the issues and I see the problem, and that's why I've been doing this for the last 14 years. We have now taken it up to the ASEAN level, what we have been doing in the Philippines. And all 10 council members, 10 chairmen believe in that. Prosperity cannot only be for a few. When you are negotiating for free trade, whether it's RCEP or TPP or whatever it is, the chances is what is the right balance that gives each country the opportunity to benefit and grow. The moment that is not there, then there is no inclusiveness, and you will see a breakup of ASEAN. So ASEAN can stand strong and become stronger if there is greater inclusivity among the 10 countries.
Yes. Please convince the Vietnamese Prime Minister to attend, because we really have to learn from them after being ravaged by war for decades, and they're on the way to progress.
I totally agree with you. I've been talking to the ambassador almost every 12 hours. They have not said no, they have not said yes, and I think there's a good chance that the Prime Minister will attend after talking to the chairman of the Advisory Council of Vietnam. So we're praying that he attends, because they have truly a great story to say. So what did they do that we can learn from?
Thank you.
The lady in the black jacket, please.
Thank you. My name is Christine Huang from South China Morning Post, China. I want to know that how do you view China's role in achieving your goal to prosperity for all? Thank you.
We're talking here of the Philippines, well, or ASEAN. Well, if we look at basically the Philippines, I look at our president's move towards being a partner rather than an adversarial partner as the right step. We all know China is a very strong nation, and it is to our benefit that we find a win-win solution towards the issues on what is happening with the building of these establishments in the reefs. And I think down the road, as you know, ASEAN relationship develop, and especially with the 10 countries, there will be a solution. A solution, what I always call the ASEAN way. And we don't have the military power to really challenge these big countries. That is almost like committing suicide. But we have the power to really develop a relationship with our neighbors, because Filipino people are very friendly and very, you know, hospitable. And many Asian countries have the same character. So we have to see this region continue to prosper. And definitely with China there as a country of so many billion of people, the tourism that can benefit ASEAN is tremendous. The amount of resources they have in terms of financial resources, agriculture, technology, and so forth, definitely our country can benefit. The amount of exports that ASEAN can do to China is there. So the relationship between China and ASEAN is very important. And both sides have to really work hard towards achieving that win-win relationship.
The gentleman in the stripes in blue, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Elijah Feliz Rosales from the Business Mirror. Sir, I would like to ask for your opinion now that the quantitative restriction on rice is about to expire. This is on the Philippine side. What are the policy recommendations of the ASEAN Business Council for this? We know that the farmers are not yet ready for the looming competition in the market. So what's the policy recommendation of the council? Thank you.
We have not discussed that, and I'm told we have already deferred it a couple of times, and there is no chance to deferring it again. But the implementation, I'm told, will take some time. So the president's feeling is, of course, towards the poor. And from the way I see it, he will have to look at the balance here. And in my trip with him in Talavera a couple of weeks back, you can see that those farmers who moved to hybrid rice, the productivity increases between 6 to 8 metric tons per hectare, which is comparable to our ASEAN neighbors. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Do we have enough time to achieve that? Maybe not, because 2 years is short. So the government's thrust, and especially Secretary Manny Piñol, is to implement as fast as possible to convince these rice farmers to shift to hybrid rice. And many of the hybrid rice users are open to allowing importations because in a way it will force people to be competitive. But of course you have to help them by providing them capital, providing them equipment. So I think they will be able to strike a balance here by complying with what was agreed among ASEAN and allowing farmers the chance to be successful in shifting to hybrid rice. So these are things that we really would like to learn from, of course, the ASEAN neighbors. Of course, many of them are fortunate to have the Mekong River as a big asset, no? And in our case, we don't have such. So we have to find our own solution, and the government's solution really is to provide free irrigation under Secretary Manny Piñol. So I'm not giving up because if in the end what happens is greater poverty is created because tariff barriers have been removed, the government has not done its job towards, preparing the farmers, then people will question, and why be part of ASEAN if we are really being left behind? So it is not ASEAN's fault, but maybe we have to step up and really be mentored by these nations who once upon a time were learning from the Philippines. So I'm confident that Sec Manny of Agri will be able to do what he's supposed to do in really striking that balance.
Next question. The lady in the middle. Yep.
Sir, good afternoon. Joanne from the Philippines News Agency. Sir, you mentioned earlier that one of the topics for tomorrow's sessions is on capitalization, particularly on non-traditional funding. What is the reason for this? Is there higher opportunities now on this sector?
Hello. Our session on funding, where's the funding, will be led by people like Mr. Buenaventura, Alex Buenaventura of the Land Bank, which Land Bank is a big institution, which as everybody knows is a traditional institution. But for tomorrow, for instance, he will be discussing cooperatives, financing through cooperatives. And then the other members of the panel will be discussing funding for very, very small entrepreneurs, as little as 1,000 or 5,000 pesos per borrower, for instance. We have another speaker who is going to talk about funding for startup technology companies, those with big ambition, those with very high technology solutions, but are not eligible for bank loans. So these are just illustrations as to the type of people and the type of organizations that will be talking about non-traditional funding. So why is that? Because there are very different needs for micro and small or even starting corporations. And we have to give equal opportunity for these companies to get access to financing. That's why when we were putting together the program, we looked at all of these opportunities, financing opportunities that could be had, and maybe they do not know about it, and we're going to make it available for discussion tomorrow.
Please don't forget to state your name and affiliation.
Good afternoon. I'm Cesar Vallejos of Eagle News. It is anticipated that we are about to enter the golden age of infrastructure because of the 7 trillion pesos earmarked by this government within the 6-year period. The question is, and there are also reports that investments will come from Japan, China, and even Russia. So what's the role of the ASEAN in this infrastructure development, and are there programs of the Business Advisory Council to ensure that the SMEs would also benefit from this boldest, most ambitious infrastructure development of the government?
We have seen from the very successful countries in ASEAN that the moment you create the infrastructure, roads, ports, airports, the entrepreneurs start to happen. Tourism. When you bring about a robust tourism sector, obviously the biggest beneficiary there will be your micro and small entrepreneurs. We've seen that from one little example in Boracay. The moment they started to allow an Airbus 320 to land in Boracay, you can see the island unbelievably doing extremely well. And you can see many of the entrepreneurs benefit from the entire ecosystem, selling various goods, products, etc., etc. There are 7,100 islands in this Philippines, and I have been to all over most of them. The potential of Coron, Linapacan, Palawan, Siquijor, Siargao, you can name all of them. The potential of the Philippines in tourism is phenomenal. Yes, the massive infrastructure that will be brought in is hopefully finally going to happen. The previous administration, I credit them for really having great governance and reducing corruption. This administration is starting, and what it's going to do is start to act on very important things. As we all see, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, they have the best airports. Our airport here has only basically 1 or 2 runways that crisscross each other. How can you really bring tourism in this country when you have to fly so many times before you land? I mean, you wait sometimes in the air, you wait in the delays and all of that. So it is really a no-brainer that the moment infrastructure in any country is established, especially the roads, the railways, and all of that, prosperity does happen. Prosperity only belongs to the central area of activity like Luzon, because that is where bulk of the infrastructure was done. But the moment you create the infrastructure to the other areas in the provinces, then you give everybody a chance to become wealthy, to have greater prosperity. Farm to market access is there. Cost to distribute goes down. Establishments move up. So it is really, to me, a blessing that finally we will see this thing happen. Now, how fast will it happen? That we will still have to see. But I am definitely sure that on top of the massive spending will help your GNP, that alone will also create a vibrant business environment in these provinces. The asset of this country is really, to me, tourism. That is still untapped, and the potential is huge. Now, definitely agriculture will prosper because now the roads are easier and we'll be able to connect with the farmers rather than having a hard time going to the main market. So, I'm extremely bullish, and I think this is also the roadmap of many of these countries who have succeeded.
My name is Lintang, and I from Indonesian media. I would like to ask you about the rise of protectionism from the Western world, especially from the United States of America, that I think would surely affect negatively the small and medium enterprises in ASEAN. As you know that in the beginning of this month, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, signed an executive order to probe potential trade abuse by 16 countries, and 4 of those countries are from ASEAN. And many of those countries are also engaged in RCEP discussion. Do you think that this, the rise of the trend of protectionism from the United States is important to the business community of ASEAN? And if you think it is important, will there be a discussion of this matter in the next day's conference? Thank you.
I don't know if there will be a discussion because we're limited to the advisory council. But talking about America, I think President Trump is trying to bring back the jobs to America. And rightly so, he is the president, and I don't fault him for that. But then the reality is that as large corporations grow, like our corporations, your cost structure improves and your cost structure goes higher because you're paying people higher salaries, if you look at it in that manner. The structure in America in terms of cost is far much higher than ASEAN countries, whereby companies can operate at much, much lower cost structure. And outsourcing has been the wave for many, many years, and that's what has propelled China to where it is. That's what propelled the Philippines to where we are today with BPOs, KPOs, and labor outsourcing. Even our manufacturing here is basically labor outsourced, the equipment supplied by them. In the end, this is what I say, what is the balance? Similar to our rice, do you help the consumer by providing them the lowest cost of goods and services at the expense of who? So in the end, is America going to bringing the jobs at the expense of the consumer? But in the end, it's the consumer that's going to dictate. In the end, that is, who is going to buy an iPhone that is going to cost much more in America than what can be done in Asia, and various things. The reality of which is that if the cost structure is that high, and you won't make it. So I think it is a great vision, but is it achievable? I do not think so. A typical employee who works in a call center in the Philippines makes about, I'd say, at the high of $500 a month. I don't think an American will want to be paid $500 a month. So they will have to bring their cost structures down, and or else their products will just go up and be expensive. So we have to wait and see. And I don't think it will work, quite frankly. Even in the Philippines, as you can see, we are looking to source rice from the countries that can produce it, much less than us, because we want the consumers to benefit. And I was saying earlier that, okay, how do you now give a little bit of time to your farmers who are the poorest in this country, the rice farmers, the chance to level up? If there is no roadmap to leveling up, just open the door and get out of rice. But if there's a chance to level up, then give them that window of a year or 2. And if they don't level up, then let them fall down and look for something else. I think ultimately that is the principle, that the consumers should benefit. They become the decision makers as what product they can afford to buy. That's my belief.
I'm Wilson from Xinhua News Agency. A follow-up question for Mr. Concepcion, also about RCEP. As an advisor to President Duterte, I would like to know how forcefully the Philippines is pushing for the conclusion of the negotiation of RCEP during the Philippine chairmanship. And also, as a CEO of a large corporation, could you talk about how such kind of trade agreement like RCEP would affect your company and affect the business community in the Philippines? Thank you.
I'm not really in the position to discuss RCEP with the President because that should be the job of the Trade Secretary, Secretary Mon Lopez. Secretary Mon Lopez and I worked together. He was working in our corporation for many years, and he was the executive director of the Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship, Go Negosyo. And Secretary Mon Lopez understands what micro and small enterprises really need. And I'm glad that he is now the Trade Secretary who has partnered with us, and especially now with ASEAN ABAC, moving towards really creating help for our entrepreneurs. The President really is very simple in mind. And the way I size him up, he leaves most of the decisions to the economic team. But then, the moment the poor is affected, that is what gets him riled up. And you can see his passion towards the drug issue in this country, because he believes that a lot of people take advantage of the poor by, as they consume the drugs, they take advantage of the problems of the poor. And to him, that is the wrong way. So in the same manner, he became president because a lot of Filipinos believe that he is a president that can make the difference towards creating an inclusive environment in our country. So for as long as RCEP will benefit the poor, you can see him supporting it. And then again, remember, it all depends on the negotiations, on how everything is done. Is it a win-win for all countries? No? It cannot be a win-lose, because at the moment that happens, then the agreement will just fall apart. And you can see even with President Trump, he feels that many of the agreements are a win-lose for America, and he wants to pull out. So if it does affect a nation whereby the people of that nation suffer, you cannot blame the leadership for wanting to change the game. But then in reality, one has to realize that is that vision of pulling out practical? Or is it really like in a corporation, are you now irrelevant because your cost structure is just too high? It happens to any establishment in the private sector. We see big corporations fall down because they cannot compete because their cost structure is not there anymore. And I look at countries in similar ways. ASEAN has the great advantage because our cost structures are far much lower than Europe and America. That is the strength of ASEAN today. And by and large, that will continue to be our strength. So companies who want to survive, they have to realize and realign their cost structure. That's all I have to say.
Yep. Lady with the purple computer.
Hello, good morning. I'm a blogger with BlogWatch, and my question for you is, most of the companies in the private sector, at least the large ones, have their own CSR programs already, corporate social responsibility programs. Are you taking a look at how to integrate this into your larger roadmap, and whether you would tap into the CSRs of the different ASEAN countries and try to have some kind of interoperability so that all of these CSR programs brought together and probably leveled up would help achieve what you want to achieve?
I think it's very important that I wouldn't even call it a CSR. in fact, inclusive business or developing your company towards greater inclusivity should not be a corporate social responsibility. It is really what you should do as a human being. In the end, you know, as a public listed company, sometimes we struggle because we are expected to hit very high targets, 10% growth, and you become the darling of the stock market. And sometimes, how do you balance what you give and what you take? And that balance, to me, determines how inclusive you really are in your business. As I share this with many of the businessmen, I too struggle with that on how to balance between performance and achieving beyond performance and being fair and trying to give more to the entrepreneurs in terms of how much they can make. In the end, big business does control how much others can make. So inclusivity really has to start from the heart. And I have no answer to it, but basically the entrepreneur, the founder, the president really has to internalize it. And that's why it's beyond corporate social responsibility. It is really a mindset of how you can make your whole company and bring in all of these people to help them aspire and bring them out of poverty. It is happening by and large, especially under this administration, where they have seen this president really fight for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, at least in the Philippines. And I don't blame him. He is not pro-rich. He is definitely pro-poor. So, to my mind, it is a balance. Really by not pushing it, that whereby the cost to operate business becomes now too high, and that in the end, you cannot compete with the other countries. So it is that balance. If you look at America, the wages they pay is very high. They have done extremely the benefits and all of that, which have also rendered them to be uncompetitive. And they're losing market share all over the world. While in the countries in Asia, you can see that to some extent, businesses have a low cost. But it also has a price because workers are not getting as much as what other countries are able to pay. But in the end, it has created employment for many of us, jobs coming to this country because of our low-cost structure. So if you're looking at it, for now, job generation for ASEAN countries and ASEAN nations, to me, are important, job creation. And eventually in time, as countries mature, economies mature, and you do better, this will scale up. So looking at it from my own perspective, that's how I see it.
Okay, we can take
I'd
one
like
more.
to add to that.
Oh.
It was mentioned earlier by Mr. Concepcion that on September 6th there will be an awarding of the ASEAN Business Awards, a special category which reiterates how the entire ASEAN Business Advisory Council supports CSR, or the leveled up version of CSR, which is inclusive business, is that a new and special award called Inclusive Business will be, is now being promoted for nomination. So, and we have here as a very strong partner the Department of Trade and Industry for the Philippine Secretariat, and all the other secretariats of the 9 other members of ASEAN forming their own secretariats to find the IB, inclusive business companies, one per country, to be awarded in September.
Okay. Thank you very much to our speakers from ASEAN BAC. And thank you all for your questions and for joining us today. For more information, please check our website and our Facebook pages. And that ends today's press briefing. Thank you.
Who's next after?